Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got an interesting show for you. Hugh Freeze flipped 2 5-stars, one from Bama and one from Georgia. And should the SEC be worried because Hugh is on the march? He's absolutely pilfering 5 stars from his local competition, which is obviously Alabama.
Alabama!
And then, of course, Georgia. These are 2 big pickups. Now, there's a lot going on with Auburn. There's also rumors that they tried to get a certain quarterback from another team for about $1.5 million, and that could be tampering. We'll see about that. And look, I know what some of y'all are going to say out there, because there's reports of that, and because of his history, that maybe he's doing something he shouldn't do, or maybe he's a little bit dirty.
How dare you!
I don't want to hear that. Hugh Freeze would never do anything underhanded. And here's the other thing. Those 2 flips, that may be over money, but you're allowed to do that. So that's definitely not breaking the rules. And it's rumored about the $1.5 million. I don't know if that's the case, that it was Auburn. We don't know if that was the team. But we're going to take a look at this and see if we can figure it out. And this is a story by Chris Peterson on Fansided. And Auburn flipped 5-star linebacker DeMarcus Riddick from Georgia and a 5-star wideout Perry Thompson from Alabama. They're both from the state of Alabama, and that's the thing about Auburn. You got to remember, they've got deep pockets there, and they've won that, and they've won national titles. So it's not like they can't do that there. I think they just had a lot of problems with Brian Harsin. He just didn't fit the culture and had a lot of problems. But Hugh Freeze, Auburn doesn't care. Okay, understand, their top 2 coaches both had show causes attached to them. One was our guy, Bruce Pearl, who had a 3-year show cause. And then, obviously, Hugh Freeze, who had all the problems at Ole Miss and that whole nightmare, had a show cause. So they don't care. Auburn just wants to win.
I'm sorry, winning. You starting to get the concept now? Oops, winning.
And honestly, if that's all you're concerned about, they hired the right guy. Hugh Freeze wins everywhere he goes. Bruce Pearl wins everywhere he goes. And now they've got these 2 5-stars, and they might pick up another one. You never know. Now let's take a look at the rankings where they sit right now. Auburn, that is. They were way down there, but I think they've moved up quite a bit with these 2 5-stars. Yeah, they're sitting at number 18. I think they were in around 35th or 40th at one point. But they've got 14 commits, but their average is nice and high, 91.85. That's a really good average. Those 2 5-stars obviously played a huge role, but they're recruiting well. And again, they do have deep pockets. They got that Yellowwood guy, and they're spending the money. They don't care to do it. I think they didn't want to spend it with Brian Harsin, but I think they're comfortable enough with Hugh Freeze because, look, he beat Saban twice.
Oh, there they go! There they go!
And when you beat Nick Saban and you're at Auburn, they respect you. And they're obviously willing to open up the checkbook, and it's starting to work for him. Now, he's not going to win big this first year. He's going to struggle, probably win 5-6 games, something like that. But the next year, he'll probably win 8 or 9. And then he's going to be tough to handle. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure Nick Saban's not happy to have him next door. Because, again, this is a guy that kind of had Nick's number, and nobody really has Nick's number. But if there is somebody that does, it's Hugh Freeze. Now let's talk a little bit about this possible tampering with the quarterback up in Maryland. And this is a YouTuber, Matt B. Great, who's talking about it a little bit in one of his videos.
I meant to talk about this yesterday, but we just didn't get to it in the video. It's going to be short and sweet. Taliaferro, he was offered $1.5 million to transfer to a quote-unquote unnamed SEC program. Some of y'all may not find this interesting, but I find it really interesting for multiple different factors. Factor number 1 is, and this came to my mind, and I mean this in the most respectful way, I love Tua, I love his brother, I love his family, everything they've done for the University of Alabama, but is Talia even good enough for the SEC? I don't know. That's question number 1. And question number 2 is, would an SEC team even want him? I really don't think so. That's my honest opinion, but let's pull up his stats and numbers. You know what they say? Men lie, women lie, but numbers, they never lie. And I already know as I'm pulling up these stats, I'm just going to say it now, some nerd in the comment section go, well, Matt, he played at Maryland. He doesn't have the wide receivers that Alabama has. Just shut up, you nerd. I'll talk about his last 2 years in 2021 and 2022. 2021, he had nearly 4,000 passing yards. That's great. 26 touchdowns to 11 INTs. You would like to see him clean up the INTs, but it's not too shabby. And in 2022, to what really I thought was supposed to be his breakout year, and I was high on him, it wasn't too great. 3,000 passing yards to 18 touchdowns and only 8 INTs. Now, the thing with Talia is he's not as accurate as his brother Tua, not even close. Is he a good quarterback? I'd say he's pretty good, but he's not Tua. Everybody knows that. If he was Tua or even close to him, he would have stayed at Alabama, but there's a reason he transferred. He was never going to play at Alabama. The one bad part about Talia's game, and I hate it because I've been rooting for him, I've always wanted to be high on him, but it's just a terrible part of his game, is he throws a lot of INTs. He's a turnover machine. Well, maybe calling him a turnover machine is a stretch, but he throws a lot more INTs and has a lot more dangerous passes than what I like to see out of my starting quarterback. And some of you may say, well, Matt, it's not that bad. 26 touchdowns, 11 INTs, 18 touchdowns, 8 INTs, but at the end of the day, that's only about a 2-to-1 ratio. That's not what you like to see. You'd like to see that number around 25 touchdowns to 5 INTs, around 20 touchdowns to 4 or 5 INTs. With that being said, though, and it's very hard for me to evaluate him because he's had some games and even had a couple last year, I'm like, man, this guy might be a top 10 quarterback in the country. He was unreal, but it's not consistent. And at the quarterback position, you got to have consistency. So going back to the couple of questions I had, is he even good enough for the SEC? And would an SEC team even want him? And if so, which team? Well, number one, and let me go back on this because I said no originally. Yes, I think he could be a starter for a low SEC team. I'm talking about a team like Vanderbilt, Missouri, Florida at this current moment in time, and maybe, I don't want to say Mississippi State's a bad team, but probably a team like Mississippi State. Maybe Arkansas if they didn't have KJ Jefferson. Teams like...
I could definitely see him being a starter at Auburn. Auburn's kind of in the doldrums right now, and the quarterback they've got, they're not totally sold on. So I could see them throwing some money at this guy. He's pretty solid, he's experienced, and he's got some name recognition, which is also good for selling tickets and things like that.
But as far as it goes for a team like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, teams like that, no. I just don't think he's a high-level quarterback. I think he's a pretty good quarterback, but not a high-level quarterback. And if you're playing for those teams, got to be high-level. Let's go back to this question, though. Which team or teams in the SEC would have even offered him this money? Off the top of my head, it couldn't have been too many because those 5 teams I just listed, your top dogs, they're not going to offer him. They don't need him. To go along with that, Auburn, they weren't going to offer him money. They already got their guy, Peyton Thorne. Texas A&M, they already got their guy, Connor Wingman. Missouri's got Brady Cook coming back. Vanderbilt's quarterback was decent last year. Most of these SEC schools already have their quarterback. My point is, and let's make a long story short here because I've already talked about this long enough, I don't know which team would have offered him $1.5 million. I'm not saying this report is wrong because maybe a team did, but I just have a hard time trying to figure out who would have. Because he's not good enough to be a starting quarterback for one of the top 7 teams in the SEC. But, and I have a big but, he is good enough to be a starter for the lower 7 teams in the SEC. The only team that I could even think of that really has a terrible quarterback room is Florida, but even their head coach, Billy Napier, he's came out and stated, oh yeah, Graham Mertz, he's the future, he's our guy. So if he feels that way about Graham Mertz, I don't think he would have offered Talia.
That would make some sense with Florida, but I don't know. Supposedly Graham Mertz was the guy that he wanted. If you've listened to any of the Florida folks, whether it's Peek into the Gators with Allie Peek, or if you listen to High Top Sports, Graham Mertz is their guy. You know, they're excited about him for some reason. And this guy's numbers are way better. But I would not be a bit surprised if Auburn was involved with this because, again, I think their guy's Robbie Ashford, and I don't think they're sold on him. So throwing $1.5 million at a guy that's those are good numbers. They're not fantastic numbers, but they're good numbers. And Hugh Freeze is the type of guy, he's kind of a QB whisperer, and his offense has worked everywhere it's been, and he's very confident in that offense. So Auburn might be a prime candidate. So anyway, I find this Hugh Freeze thing very interesting. He's going to win. I mean, that's just a fact. He's won everywhere he's been. He's going to win down there, and he's going to get some recruits. He's got money behind him. These big donors at Auburn, you know, they'll spend money if they think they're going to win. And this business of tampering, if you think Hugh Freeze wouldn't be involved in that a little bit.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
You know, look, he has a reputation for a reason. But be on the lookout for Auburn. Now, understand, Tennessee, I don't know when we're going to play Auburn again. I really don't, because you've got Greg Sankey that's on this 9-team kick, and if he doesn't get his 9 teams, he's probably just going to keep the schedule as close to where it is now with East and West, which even though there won't be an East and West, he's probably going to keep it as close as he can because in 2024, again, we're playing Georgia and Alabama, and you would have thought one of those teams would have fallen off because with an 8-team deal, you're supposed to have one permanent opponent, which for us would be Vanderbilt, and then we'd play 7 other teams and then 7 other teams the next year. So he's not moving to that. So he's probably going to keep it very similar to where we play a bunch of teams in the East. So I don't know when we're going to see Auburn again, which is kind of a shame. I think that's a good rivalry. I'd like to see us play them every other year like we would. But it may be a while because Sankey's, he's not happy. He wants 9 games, and he's not going to get it because the coaches aren't going to agree to it unless there's $140 million sitting there at the end of the rainbow on that one. So this is pretty interesting to watch these other teams and kind of see how it affects us. But understand Auburn getting stronger in some respects weakens Alabama and Georgia because they're right sandwiched between the two. So if they get better, that's not necessarily a bad thing for us. It might be a good thing if some of those 5 stars aren't always going to Alabama and Georgia, the 2 teams we always seem to play. So that's one way to look at it. Oh, and by the way, I will start doing some live shows. We're going to start August 28th with Talking Vols and BVD. I think we're going to do a 7 o'clock, and then the next week I think we're going to start doing some afternoon shows. And we'll be on each other's channel from time to time. Again, that's going to be at the end of the month, and I'll give you reminders as we get closer. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover the Vols. And, of course, fall camp is just getting started. We're 33 days from the kickoff against Virginia and Nashville. It's getting exciting. And if you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just boom, hit that little button. With only a little over a month to go, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It'll help you find my videos a lot easier. And right over here's the most recent video that YouTube thinks you'll love. And we will see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.